It looks like Ron Paul could win Iowa, and now the candidate's past is getting a closer look. In the 80s and 90s, Paul put his name on several newsletters. Ron Paul's Political Report, Ron Paul's Freedom Report. You get the idea. Well, here are a few examples of what was published in those newsletters. We are constantly told that it is evil to be afraid of black men. It is hardly irrational. Order was only restored in L.A. when it came time for the blacks to pick up their welfare checks. Paul was asked about the newsletters by CNN.
I didn't write them. I disavow them. That's it.
So you read them, but you didn't do anything about it at the time?
I never read that stuff. I've never read it. I was probably aware of it 10 years after it was written.
These things are pretty incendiary, you know.
Because of people like you.
No. Come on. Some of the stuff was very incendiary, and you know, saying that in 1993 the Israelis were responsible for the bombing of the World Trade Center, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So,
goodbye.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Paul's claims are not holding up. Here's a 1995 C-SPAN interview in which Paul seems to be quite knowledgeable about his newsletter's content.
I also put out a political type of business investment newsletter. It sort of covered all these areas, and it covered a lot about what was going on in Washington.
And a 1996 Dallas Morning News report shows that not only was Paul aware of the newsletter's content, he wrote some of it. Paul wrote in his political newsletter in 1992 that 95% of black men in Washington, D.C. are semi-criminal or entirely criminal. He also wrote that black teenagers can be unbelievably fleet of foot. Dr. Paul defends his writings. In an interview, he said they were being taken out of context. Joining me now is Dr. James Peterson, Director for Africana Studies and Associate Professor of English at Lehigh University. Professor, good to have you with us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Should these statements disqualify this man from office of the presidency?
I believe so, especially the extent to which we can actually connect him to them and the extent to which he plays sort of political maneuvers and tries to deny himself from being involved with them, right? Because that goes to credibility, but then also goes to his own political ideology and his social ideology. Remember, also, this is not just racism. There's anti-Semitism there. There's some sexism there. There's homophobia there. There's a lot in these newsletters that if we sort of put Ron Paul in the same context of someone like a Herman Cain or a Newt Gingrich, where we go back 15, 20 years and look at their behaviors and look at what they did as a way of interpreting what they're going to do going forward, that for us should suggest that Ron Paul either has to come out and really apologize and explain this away, or we're going to run into some problems down the line.
Well, he said in a 1996 Dallas Morning News interview that his statements were taken out of context. What do you think?
Well, that's kind of the stock answer for these kinds of issues. Again, it's very, very difficult for me to believe that a newsletter that has his name on it, even in the 90s, is something that he's not going to vet or in any way see. I mean, wouldn't he understand then that could diminish his brand? And so wouldn't he sort of be policing that a little bit more closely? That answer just doesn't make sense. And I think when you see him walk away from the CNN reporter, that's very, very telling. That suggests to us that he's not prepared to handle being the front runner in this sort of Republican presidential revolving door, and not prepared to handle the heat for some of the things that he said in some of those newsletters.
Do you think he's lying? I mean, he said in that interview that he hadn't read them and he didn't write them, and then in the other interview he acknowledges knowing about its content. I mean, what do you make of that?
I mean, I don't want to call him a liar, but I think, you know, he needs a much better political calculus for how he's handling this right now. The bottom line is the content of those newsletters is disturbing. It's racist, it's sexist, it's homophobic, and in some places it's anti-Semitic, and he has to answer the charges of that newsletter because it had his name on it. There's no escaping that for him. He can say that he didn't read it or he did read it. He needs to sort of explain that away, more than disavowing it, too. He's got to actually explain what was the process of circulating those letters. Did he actually make money off of that? And look, there are a lot of white supremacist groups that are rallying to his defense right now. Those are the same kind of groups that I believe supported that newsletter in the beginning. He's got to distance himself from that, or yes, I think it will diminish his capacity to do well in this race, especially beyond Iowa.
Do you think the Republican Party should step into this one? Should the RNC chair make a statement? Should someone in a leadership position step up and say that this is uncalled for or more has to be said?
In a perfect world, you know, the RNC and other conservative leaders would step up and sort of distance themselves from this, explain they're not a part of this, but this is not a perfect world.
They're not used to doing that, that's for sure.
They are
Dr.
not.
James Peterson, have a great holiday. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, sir.
That's The Ed Show. I'm Ed Schultz. And again,